Have you ever had that feeling, that incredibly frustrating, almost, well, maddening feeling? You know exactly what you should be doing. Like the task list is right there, the goal's crystal clear.
Right.
You know, with absolute certainty, this is the thing I need to do for my job, my health, whatever.
Yeah.
But then you just don't do it.
Uh-huh.
Instead, it's endless scrolling or binge watching some show you don't even care about.
Or suddenly deciding the spice rack really needs reorganizing right now.
Exactly. It's that internal battle, right?
So-
Like your own brain is working against you even when you know better.
It feels like that, definitely.
Well, if that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. And here's the kicker. It might not be what you think it is.
Ah, okay.
So today, on the deep dive, we're going to really unpack this. We're diving deep into why we fail to act on what we know is right.
And more importantly,
And how to actually harness your brain's, natural tendencies to become more proactive.
you need to actually do the thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And our deep dive today, it's going way beyond that old idea of just needing more willpower.
Oh, yeah, the willpower thing. It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
It does. And frankly, that concept often just leads to, well, self-blame and feeling rubbish about yourself.
Totally. Like it's some kind of moral failing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So instead, our mission today is to explore some really fascinating insights, some quite groundbreaking stuff from neuroscience and psychology.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
These insights, they reveal the hidden mechanisms, the stuff happening under the hood that drives our actions or often our inaction.
Right, the spice rack moments.
Exactly. You'll discover how you can effectively manage your own brain. Think of it like getting the owner's manual.
Huh. I could use one of those.
Couldn't we all? An owner's manual, so your brain naturally switches into what we might call an act immediately mode.
Okay, so not forcing it, but guiding it.
Exactly. It's not about brute force. It's about understanding the why behind your behavior and then, crucially, leveraging that knowledge.
For what? More productivity, less guilt.
Both. Greater productivity, better focus, and maybe the most liberating part, less of that draining self-criticism.
All right, I'm ready. Let's dive in. Okay, so let's start with a scenario, one that I guarantee you will sound really familiar. It's actually from the author of one of our sources.
Okay. Lay it on us.
Picture this. It's Sunday morning, peaceful, sun's coming through the window. You wake up, glance at the clock. Oh no, 9 a.m.
Panic.
Initial panic, yeah. But then, relief. It's the weekend. No work, no school, just relax.
Nice.
But then it hits you, that nagging thought.
Uh-oh. The should.
Exactly. Oh, but I have that final exam next week. I really, really need to study.
Yep, been there.
But despite knowing that, the fatigue from the week just feels heavier. Like peeling yourself out of bed is impossible.
The bed suddenly becomes incredibly comfortable.
Magically so.
Yeah.
And you tell yourself, okay, I must get up now. But then drift back to sleep just for a bit.
That lovely dozy half sleep while the clock just ticks.
Ticks and ticks. And you finally open your eyes again, and oops, it's past noon.
Whoops. Fresh wave of anxiety.
Oh yeah, major anxiety. Chest tightens. Okay, no way I'll catch up if I don't start right this second.
Pressure's on.
But instead of grabbing the textbook, what do? You turn on the TV, even though you barely watch TV.
Right, anything but the task. Channel surfing.
Just flipping channels, vaguely aware time's slipping away. Then maybe you drag yourself to the desk.
Progress.
But can't find the textbook or the notes or, wait, I need that specific pen.
Any excuse. Perfectly logical excuses, of course.
Perfectly logical. Anything to avoid actually starting. Does that sound painfully familiar? The author says this was basically his student life. Constant procrastination, last-minute cramming.
Sometimes just scraping by.
Sometimes scraping by, sometimes, having to retake exams. And after every single one, he'd beat himself up. Why is my willpower so weak? Why do I always put things off?
That internal monologue of self-blame, it's exhausting.
It really is. And I bet many of us, even now as professionals, we fall into similar patterns, right? Putting off work tasks, delaying doctor's appointments.
Starting that personal project you've been dreaming about for ages.
Exactly. And what's the usual response we hear? From parents, teachers, bosses, even self-help books.
It's always weak willpower, lack of drive, or just plain lazy.
Yeah, framed as a fundamental character flaw. Something wrong with you.
But here's what's really fascinating and honestly quite liberating. That whole traditional view, it might be well, fundamentally flawed.
Flawed how?
It challenges our basic gut feeling about how decisions work. We think, okay, first I decide to do something, like I'm going to move my finger.
Right. Conscious decision first.
Then my brain sends the signal and my body does the thing. It feels like our conscious will is the captain of the ship.
Yeah, I decide, therefore I act. Seems obvious.
But groundbreaking science, especially from neuroscience, suggests a completely different sequence. It looks like our brain actually starts preparing for an action before we're even consciously aware we're going to do it.
Wait, what? Before?
Before. This goes back to a really seminal experiment in 1983 by Dr. Benjamin Libet.
Libet, okay. What did he do?
He had people do something simple, consciously decide to move their finger whenever they felt the urge. And they had to watch a clock and note the exact moment they felt that conscious urge.
Okay.
What Libet found was revolutionary. He measured brain activity, specifically something called readiness potential. It's like an electrical signal showing the brain's gearing up for movement.
Readiness potential, okay.
And he found this readiness potential appeared in the brain about 0.35 seconds before the person reported feeling the conscious decision to move.
0.35 seconds before.
Before. Think about that. Your brain was already getting ready, initiating the action, before you consciously even knew you were going to move.
So the conscious decision wasn't the starting gun. It was more like hearing the echo.
That's a great way to put it. It seems the conscious awareness of the decision came after the brain had already started the process.
Okay, hold on. Let me wrap my head around this. So the sequence isn't, I think, move finger, then brain sends command, then readiness potential, then move. That's what I always assume.
It's the intuitive sequence, yes.
But Libet flipped it. So what is the actual sequence according to him?
Exactly. He flipped it. The sequence he observed was, first, the brain generates that unconscious readiness potential.
The gearing up.
Then about 0.35 seconds later, the conscious intention, the feeling of I'm going to move now, pops into awareness.
And then the finger moves.
And then the movement itself follows. And this wasn't just some fluke from the 80s. Later research, like in 2008, using much more advanced fMRI brain scanning.
Right. The big magnet machines.
Those ones, they took it even further. Participants decided whether to press a button with their right or left hand whenever they chose. The fMRI scans showed brain activity related to that choice, starting a staggering 7 to 10 seconds before the subjects consciously made their decision.
7 to 10 seconds. That's an eternity in brain time.
It's huge. And the researchers could even predict, with decent accuracy, which hand the person would choose way before the person themselves was aware of their own choice.
That is absolutely mind-boggling. 7 to 10 seconds. My brain's already halfway through the action before I even consciously register the starting line. So What does that mean for free will? Is my conscious mind just like watching a movie of what my brain already decided?
It's a massive paradigm shift, isn't it? It forces us to really rethink consciousness and choice. The evidence strongly suggests our consciousness might largely be, well, executing or becoming aware of results from prior unconscious brain activity.
Like the press secretary announcing the decision the president already made in private.
That's not a bad analogy. Professor Riji Maino at Keio University calls it the passive consciousness hypothesis. He interprets these results to mean our inactions or our actions aren't necessarily about weak willpower or laziness in the moral sense.
Okay.
They could be seen more as predetermined facts in the brain. The initial impulse, the preparation to act or not act, often happens below the surface, driven by complex neural stuff.
So does free will just go out the window?
Not necessarily entirely out the window, but maybe its role changes. Perhaps our real freedom isn't always in initiating everything from scratch, but maybe more in our ability to become aware of these unconscious urges and then consciously veto them or modify them or choose which urge to follow. The conscious mind might have free won't rather than free will sometimes.
Okay, wow. So let's bring this back. What does this incredibly profound insight mean for you listening right now? The person who maybe struggles with procrastination, who feels like inaction is some deep, frustrating flaw.
This is the really good part.
Yeah, this feels like the liberating part you mentioned. It means all those past struggles, those times you knew what to do but just couldn't. It's not a reflection of some inherent weakness or lack of drive in you.
Right. It's not a character issue.
Not a moral failing, not even like you have defective brain wiring. Instead, it's a huge call to just understand how your brain works, these amazing things happening beneath the surface.
Understand the machinery.
Exactly. And by learning just a few key tricks or strategies to work with your brain's natural inclinations, not against them.
Anyone can become a person of action.
Anyone, without relying on just gritting your teeth and forcing it with willpower. That feels genuinely liberating. It takes away the self-criticism.
That release from self-blame is crucial. It's the first step to real change. And to really harness this understanding, to actually use it, we need to grasp how we learn any new skill, including the skill of acting immediately.
Okay, so becoming proactive is a skill we can learn.
Absolutely. And developing any skill, whether it's playing guitar, coding, or building a habit, follows a pretty predictable four-stage process.
Like climbing stairs.
Exactly. Think of it as a staircase of skill acquisition. Each step builds on the last. And to make it super clear, let's use a simple analogy from the source, brushing your teeth.
Okay, brushing teeth, everyone gets that. What's stage one? Stage one, unconscious incompetence. Okay, so this is like, you don't know what you don't know.
Precisely. You're unaware of the method, and you're unaware of your own lack of ability.
Like a tiny kid who doesn't know brushing prevents cavities, or that there's even a right way to do it.
Exactly. They're not doing it effectively, but they're blissfully unaware there's a problem or a skill involved. They are unaware and unable.
Or maybe starting a brand new job in a field you know nothing about. You don't even know the questions to ask yet.
Perfect example. Total beginner territory. Then you climb to stage 2, conscious incompetence. This is where awareness hits.
The oh moment.
Right. Maybe you get your first cavity, or the dentist explains why brushing matters. Suddenly, you know what you need to do.
You know not brushing causes cavities. You get the importance.
But you're still not actually doing it. Or not consistently, or not well.
So you're aware, but still unable.
Exactly. And this is a really crucial step, even if it feels frustrating. That awareness, even without the action yet, is the first spark of change.
But it's easy to get stuck here, right? Knowing what you should do, but just not doing it.
Very easy. A lot of procrastination lives in stage 2.
Okay, so climbing again. Stage 3, conscious competence. This sounds like where the work happens.
It is. This is where you start making a deliberate, focused effort, and that conscious effort actually leads to ability. You can do it and do it right, but it takes thought. It requires concentration, mental energy.
So back to the teeth. You're now brushing after every meal. Great.
Fantastic.
But you still have to actively think. Okay, get the molars, angle the brush, 2 full minutes.
Right. You're reminding yourself of the technique. It's effective, you're getting results, but it's not automatic yet. It's tiring.
This is the deliberate practice stage. It takes effort.
And finally, the top of the staircase. Stage 4, unconscious competence. The ultimate goal.
Mastery.
Exactly. The skill is fully integrated. It's become a natural habit. It requires little to no conscious thought.
Like brushing your teeth now. As an adult, you just do
No.
correctly, thoroughly, without thinking about the steps.
It just happens, seamlessly part of your routine, effortless.
The brain has automated it. Power-saving mode achieved.
Precisely. It's turned a chore into a background process.
Okay, this framework is really helpful, but it brings up something interesting. What about those people who seem like naturals? You know, the ones who just seem to skip stage 3 and effortlessly land in stage 4.
Ah, the born talented types.
But you're saying there's a catch.
There can be. The source material suggests something counterintuitive. These naturals often struggle more when they hit a slump or face a new challenge within that skill.
More. Why?
Because often they don't know how they learned to do it in the first place. Their process wasn't conscious or deliberate. So when something goes wrong...
They can't fix it because they don't know how the engine works.
Exactly. Self-correction becomes incredibly difficult.
There's a great example of this, right? Ichiro Suzuki, the baseball legend. Everyone called him a genius hitter.
A natural talent, seemingly effortless.
But he famously said something like, a genius can't explain why they can hit. I can explain it, so I'm not a genius. I love that quote.
It's incredibly insightful, isn't it? It perfectly captures the power of stage 3 mastery. Ichiro wasn't just relying on some mysterious innate gift.
He was conscious about it.
Deeply conscious. He engaged in continuous, meticulous practice, observation, reflection. He understood the mechanics, the why, and how.
He built this skill deliberately.
Exactly. So when a supposed natural who bypassed that conscious stage hits a slump, they're lost. They can't pinpoint what's wrong because they never consciously built the foundation.
They just did it before.
Right. But someone like Ichiro, who went through stage 3 with deep awareness, can analyze, diagnose, and methodically fix the problem.
That makes so much sense.
It really highlights that sustainable action, improvement, and resilience, especially through tough times, comes from embracing stage 3. consciously building habits, understanding why they work, until they become truly second nature.
So the conscious effort is actually what makes the unconscious competence robust. It's not a shortcut to skip it.
Precisely. No one just flips a switch to proactive. It's a journey through these stages.
Okay, so if our brains are actually brilliant at automating things and reaching that stage 4, that unconscious competence, why do they seem so resistant to starting new things? Why the procrastination? Why the apparent laziness?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer lies deep in the brain's design. It's incredibly powerful, yes, the most complex thing we know.
But also lazy.
But also incredibly efficient, which can look like laziness. Strategically lazy, maybe? Consider this. The brain is only about 2% of your body weight. Tiny, relatively.
About 1,400 grams, yeah.
Yeah, around there. But it consumes a massive 20% of your daily calories. Sometimes more if you're thinking really hard.
Wow. 20% for just 2% of the weight? That's power hungry.
Extremely. So fundamentally, the brain is designed to conserve energy. It has an ingrained power-saving mode.
Like my phone.
Exactly like your phone. It defaults to rest, automation, minimizing effort whenever possible. This isn't new, it's evolutionary. Calories used to be scarce.
So procrastination isn't a modern invention. It's biology.
It's deeply rooted in that biological imperative to save energy. It's not a moral failing, it's a survival mechanism, really.
Okay, so this power-saving mode, it leads to those quick judgments, right? What we call intuition.
Yes, those reflexive judgments. Saves processing power.
And we see it everywhere. Love at first sight in movies.
That instant connection, no real reasoning needed.
Or impulsive shopping. This was made for me. Click buy.
Without thinking about the budget or if you actually need another, whatever it is.
And oh, the classic test scenario. You pick an answer, gut feeling, then you overthink it, change it.
And your first guess was right all along.
Every time. Why does that happen? Why is the gut feeling sometimes spot on, but we talk ourselves out of it?
It happens because intuition, while useful for quick, energy-saving decisions, is also really vulnerable to distortion. It gets skewed by our ingrained thinking habits.
Thinking habits?
Or more formally, cognitive biases. These are systematic errors in thinking, mental shortcuts the brain takes.
To save energy.
Exactly, to process info quickly. But these shortcuts often lead us away from the most rational or effective path. They're like blind spots baked into our thinking.
Okay, so biases mess with our intuition.
They do. So to overcome procrastination and act consistently, it's not just about doing stuff. It's about cultivating correct judgment.
Oui.
Meaning understanding where your intuition might be biased, learning to pause, evaluate those gut feelings, and then making the desired action happen almost effortlessly, like stage 4 again.
So train your brain to make the right choice the easy choice.
Precisely. Even if it feels hard at first. Consciously override the bias until the better path becomes the default.
Speaking of choices,
Yeah.
our whole lives are just a string of decisions, aren't they? Big ones, small ones.
From your morning coffee to your career path, constant choices.
But now, knowing about these biases, the big question is, are these choices rational? Or are we just falling into brain traps?
Often we're falling into traps.
Yeah.
And behavioral economics has shown this beautifully. There's a famous experiment by Kahneman and Tversky, Nobel Prize winners.
Oh yeah, prospect theory.
That's the one. It perfectly illustrates one of these traps.
Okay, let me set this up for everyone listening. Imagine 2 scenarios. Think honestly about what you would choose. Scenario 1, gains. You just won $1 million in a lottery. Nice. Now you have 2 options for collecting.
Take the $1 million right now. Guaranteed. No risk.
Flip a coin. Heads, you get $2 million. Tails, you get nothing. 0.
Certainty versus a gamble for double or nothing.
What would you choose? Now think about it, the common result. Overwhelmingly, people choose option A.
The guaranteed $1 million.
Yep, they go for the sure thing, even though mathematically the expected value of option B is also $1 million, 50% of $2. People prefer certainty when gaming. Okay, scenario 2, losses. Now, flip it. Imagine you're $2 million in debt. Ouch. Again, 2 options.
Accept an unconditional $1 million reduction. Your debt immediately becomes $1 million. Guaranteed improvement.
Flip a coin. Heads, your debt is wiped clean, 0. Tails, your debt stays at $2 million, no change.
Again, certainty versus a gamble. Reduce the debt for sure, or risk it all to eliminate it completely.
What do you choose this time? What do most people choose? Option B.
They take the risk.
They become risk takers. They gamble to eliminate the loss, even though, again, the expected value is the same. A guaranteed $1 million debt, option A, versus a 50-50 chance of 0 or $2 million debt, Option B, average.
So safe when gaining, risky when losing. Why the switch? This powerful bias is called loss aversion. It's deep-seated. Our brains weigh potential losses much, much more heavily than potential gains of the same size.
Losing hurts more than winning feels good.
Significantly more. Sometimes estimated at 2 to 3 times the emotional impact. That don't want to lose feeling is incredibly strong.
And that stops us from acting. How?
Well, when we think about starting something new or working towards a goal, our brain zooms in on the potential downsides. The wasted effort if we fail, the discomfort, losing our current comfort.
It focuses on what we might lose by trying.
Exactly. And it weighs those potential losses far more heavily than the potential rewards or benefits of succeeding. So the brain tricks us into thinking inaction is safer.
Stay put. Don't risk the loss. Even if staying put means staying stuck.
Precisely. It amplifies the negatives, downplays the positive, making inaction feel like the default safer choice.
And that ties right into another huge bias, doesn't it? The status quo bias.
Oh, absolutely. The tendency to prefer things to stay exactly as they are.
Change is scary.
Change feels risky, uncomfortable. Think about joining a new company. You walk in, fresh eyes, and you see all these inefficiencies, right?
Why do they do billing like that? So many pointless meetings.
You have ideas, but then you suggest them, and what do you hear?
Oh, that's just how we do things here. The dreaded phrase.
Exactly. And slowly, that energy to improve just fizzles out.
Why? Because changing things feels like a bigger risk than just dealing with a known inefficiency.
That's a huge part of it. It's rooted in loss aversion. We overestimate the hassle, the risk, the discomfort of changing the existing system, and we underestimate the potential benefits of doing things differently.
So we stick with the devil we know, even if the devil we know is kind of annoying and inefficient.
It feels safer, less effortful in the short term, even if it's suboptimal long term. And this isn't just about work processes. It affects our personal lives profoundly. We know we should start that diet, learn that skill, have that tough conversation.
But unless the pain of not acting is immediate and overwhelming,
we inflate the potential losses of changing. What if I fail? It's too hard. I'm comfortable now. We choose inaction, the status quo.
And then there's the crowd.
Ah, yes, the bandwagon effect. This idea from economist Hardy Leibenstein back in 1950.
Like a parade getting bigger as more people join.
Exactly. People adopt behaviors or opinions just because others are doing it. Our brain uses a shortcut. If everyone else is doing it, says it's good, it must be safe or right.
Safety in numbers. Less thinking required.
We feel validated by the majority, but it means we often outsource our own critical thinking. And the internet, social media, it's like the bandwagon effect on steroids.
Constantly seeing what everyone else is doing, buying, achieving.
Right. Which can make us even more susceptible to trends and opinions, less likely to think for ourselves, and sometimes less motivated to pursue our own unique goals.
Because our goals might feel harder or less validated than what the crowd is doing.
Potentially, yes. It can subtly erode intrinsic motivation. That's why the source suggests an information detox.
Stepping away deliberately.
Intentionally stepping back from the constant barrage of others' opinions and evaluations. Not forever, but strategically.
Like setting screen time limits, muting certain feeds.
Or just spending time offline, in nature, doing something creative alone. Create mental space to hear your own signals, your own values, your own goals again.
Quiet the external noise to hear the internal signal. That makes sense. You know, it highlights such a funny thing about us humans. When we see someone else procrastinating, like a colleague, missing deadlines.
You can see the train wreck coming.
Clearly. You see the negative consequences, the lost opportunities. It's so obvious what they should do.
From the outside, it looks simple.
But when it's us in that same spot, suddenly, our own status quo bias, our loss aversion, the bandwagon effect, they all kick in. We're blind to what was so obvious in someone else.
It's that paradox of observation. We're great critics of others, terrible critics of ourselves sometimes. That old saying fits perfectly. See a worthy person, emulate. See an unworthy person, self-reflect.
We're much better at the seeing the unworthy person part than the self-reflect part when it comes to inaction.
Absolutely. And understanding these biases is the key to starting to counteract them. Which brings us to another brain tendency that marketers know very well.
The manipulation station?
Well, they leverage how our brains work. We talked about the brain being lazy but efficient. This connects to something called psychological reactance.
Reactance, like a chemical reaction.
Sort of. It's the human tendency that when our freedom to choose or act is threatened or restricted, We desire that freedom and the forbidden thing even more.
The forbidden fruit effect.
Exactly. Think limited edition sneakers or sale ends Friday.
Creates urgency, fear of missing out.
Right. The brain thinks, my freedom to get this might disappear. I must act now, even if you didn't want it 2 minutes ago. But flip it. A pushy salesperson says, you absolutely must buy this.
Instant turnoff. My brain goes, don't tell me what to do.
Precisely. Your inner desire for freedom rebels against the command, killing the motivation.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's that defiant teenager inside us all.
Right.
And you see it daily, right? Parents, study hard. Supervisor, finish this report today.
Even if it's good advice or a necessary task.
That top-down command, that restriction on our perceived freedom, it triggers reactance. It makes us want to dig our heels in.
It creates internal resistance and actually saps intrinsic motivation. Your brain fights back, even against things you know you should do.
So how do we get around that? We can't just ignore deadlines or parental advice forever.
Exactly. You can't ignore reality. The key is reframing. You consciously change how you perceive the command or expectation.
Change the story in your head.
Precisely. Instead of seeing it as a limitation or pressure, reframe it as, say, high expectations because someone believes in you.
So instead of, my boss is demanding this, how annoying.
Think, they trust me to handle this quickly because they have high hopes for me, or if a friend gives advice instead of feeling controlled.
Think, they're cheering me on because they care.
Exactly. This mental shift turns the perception from pressure to support, or from restriction to challenge. It changes your brain's response from resistance to something more like collaboration or motivation.
You reclaim your sense of agency. Turn the must into a get to.
That's a great way to put it. You bypass the reactance trigger.
Okay, so we can reframe external commands, but what about the sheer exhaustion of making choices all day long? You mentioned decision fatigue.
Yes, another major energy drain. Our brains make thousands, maybe over 10,000 decisions a day.
What time to wake up, what to wear, which email to answer first.
What to have for lunch, which route to take. Tiny little choices, but each one uses a bit of mental energy.
And the brain wants to save energy.
So it automates routines. Habits become second nature, put on autopilot, saves bandwidth.
But the downside?
When you want to tackle something new, something big, something troublesome, that requires fresh thinking and effort.
The brain, cozy in its power-saving mode, resists.
Strongly resists. It feels daunting because it demands energy the brain wants to conserve for routine operations. Starting new things feels hard because it is energetically expensive for the brain. So, how do you overcome that troublesome feeling? How do you free up energy for the big stuff? The solution is almost ridiculously simple.
Don't leave me hanging.
Actively minimize the number of trivial decisions you make every day.
Cut down on the small stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Free up that mental bandwidth. The classic example, of course, is Steve Jobs.
Black turtleneck and jeans. Every single day.
It wasn't just fashion. It was a deliberate strategy. One less decision to make each morning.
Saving his brain power for, well, changing the world.
Saving it for the critical, innovative choices. He understood the cost of decision fatigue. So the practical takeaway for everyone listening, look for routine decisions you could automate or eliminate.
Like planning meals for the week. Eating the same lunch every day.
Could be. Or always choosing the daily special at the cafe near work. Laying out your clothes the night before, establishing a fixed morning routine.
Automate the trivial.
Exactly. By streamlining these small choices, you stop overloading your brain early in the day. You feel mentally fresher, bolder, more capable of tackling the significant challenges.
The ones that actually lead to growth.
The ones that really matter. You become strategically lazy about the small stuff so you can be powerfully proactive about the big stuff.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot. An incredible deep dive into why our brains do what they do. It really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
So just to quickly recap the big ideas. We learned procrastination isn't just weak willpower. It's tied to brain mechanics, like that readiness potential happening before conscious choice.
Right, the LibBet findings.
We walk through the 4 stages of skill, realizing that consciously working through stage 3 is vital for robust, automatic stage 4 action, like Ichiro.
The importance of deliberate practice.
We saw how the brain's energy-saving default leads to biases like loss aversion, fearing losses more than valuing gains, and status quo bias, sticking with the familiar even when it's bad.
And the bandwagon effect, following the crowd.
And then psychological reactance, that rebellion against commands and how reframing helps.
Turning pressure into support.
And finally, decision fatigue, and the power of minimizing trivial choices, like Steve Jobs, to save energy for big challenges.
And if you pull all those threads together, it paints a picture not of personal failing, but of, well, a biological system. An efficient, if sometimes quirky, system we can learn to manage.
Working with it, not just fighting it.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a final thought, something for you to maybe chew on after this.
Okay, give it to us.
If our brains are so naturally wired to save energy, avoid discomfort, stick to the familiar, what subtle ways might they still be resisting growth or learning in areas you haven't even consciously considered yet?
Where else might that status quo bias be hiding unnoticed?
Where might you be unconsciously delaying something important just because it feels slightly effortful or unfamiliar without even realizing that's the mechanism at play?
That's a really powerful question for self-reflection. Okay, so your call to action for this week. Pick just one insight from everything we've talked about.
Just one to start.
Maybe just notice your automatic thoughts when you feel resistance to a task. Or try reframing something that feels like a command. Apply that understanding.
Observe your own brain in action.
Because really, understanding how your own brain works, that feels like the ultimate shortcut. Moving beyond just willpower into something more like effortless, or at least understood, action.
Well said.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.